Right, the coronavirus, big story. The World Health Organization says the cost of protective gear, including face masks and gloves, it's now 20 times higher, we're told, because of the coronavirus outbreak. It says demand for items such as these face masks, gloves and respirators is up to 100 times higher than normal. The WHO's Dr. Michael Ryan told reporters in Geneva that it was vital to tackle the disruption and also profiteering.
The world is facing severe disruption in the market for personal protective equipment. Demand is up to 100 times higher than normal, and prices are up to 20 times higher. This situation has been exacerbated by widespread inappropriate use of PPE outside patient care. As a result, there are now depleted stockpiles and backlogs of 4 to 6 months. Global stocks of masks and respirators are now insufficient to meet the needs of WHO and our partners. WHO discourages stockpiling of PPE in countries and areas where transmission is low. We call countries and companies to work with WHO to ensure fair and rational use of supplies and the rebalancing of the market. We all have a part to play in keeping each other safe.
So what is the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on tourism industry? To find out more, we're joined in studio by tourism lecturer at the Tshwane University of Technology, Unathi Sonwabile Henama. Sir, thank you very much indeed for your time. Always appreciate your perspective here on this on the agenda. The tourism market of China, as well as India as well, I would say, I was just reading a bit about it. It's very important to South Africa. How much of a setback is this coronavirus in terms of tourism for South Africa?
If you look at China, it's the 5th most important international outbound market for South Africa.
Right.
From the year 2008, when we had the global financial crisis, more than 70% of arrivals internationally were coming from Western countries. So South Africa said, in order to ensure that the tourism industry is robust, we need to go east. That means India, China became priority markets to ensure that we achieve robustness in our tourism industry. A decline in tourism arrivals from China will have a very, very negative impact on tourism in South Africa. That is because domestic tourism has declined as a factor of economic growth in South Africa for the past 3 to 4 years. So we've been actually more disproportionately dependent on regional and international tourism to mitigate the entire tourism value chain in South Africa. So unfortunately, these are bad news for South Africa.
Yeah. I mean, many cities around the world reportedly are starting to experience this precipitous drop in tourists coming from China. How much do we stand to lose?
I think possibly we might lose nearly 1 million.
Yeah.
Because remember, South Africa, every year for the past 2 years, we've been sitting at 10 million arrivals. And our intention is to ensure that we move that to 20 million by the year 2030.
Yeah.
Because remember, for each and every 11 tourists that come here, 1 permanent job is created. So this is a labor-intensive industry. So also, other people from other countries will also be scared to travel because globally aviation becomes one of the means by which we suspect that the coronavirus has been moving so fast from China and other quarantined areas. So also people fear it's not like a tourist attack. It's not like unfavorable weather conditions because they are already defined as crisis-resistant tourists. This is a major health emergency. So it might actually make people to say, I'd rather not travel up until this is cleared down.
I was listening to a tour operator the other day saying that the only thing that's traveling is the virus. So it's really hurting the tourism industry in that regard. For South African tour operators, how should they approach this outbreak?
I think the most important thing is to constantly communicate with their current and future clients and those in the past to ensure that they would obviously be looking for destinations where there's a low probability that this might happen. Fortunately, the majority of African countries have not necessarily been impacted. There are suspected but not confirmed cases. So we are on the right path. But the most important thing for the African continent is we must have one coherent message about the corona outbreak. What is the African perspective? And obviously we expect President Ramaphosa, who will be ascending to the AU, to articulate that position so that as a continent, we are able to give a coherent message, because we do not want a situation that where one country speaks this, one country speaks that, because tourism to Africa is important.
Yeah.
We only receive 10% of international tourism arrivals. We want to increase that. And obviously, we all understand perception trumps reality. So we must have a coherent message about the coronavirus.
You speak about the president. He was speaking to journalists yesterday, just before he left for the African Union. I just want to bring in this into the conversation, get your take, because it's important. I mean, the global aviation industry is facing this crunch because of the coronavirus. But what do you make of the domestic scene here with SAA cancelling various routes in South Africa? How will that affect?
I believe the cancellation of routes by SAA is a reality of what it faces today. And SAA has to be fixed appropriately, but we must not allow government to interfere. That's the first point. Number two, you find an airline such as FlySouth is now the biggest domestic airline, and it was launched, 3 or 4 years ago? So, but the biggest challenge in South Africa are the domestic aviation regulations, which require an airline to be 75% owned by South Africans. Had that requirement not been there, which is draconian, there would be so many other airlines that are already operating, reducing the price of aviation in South Africa. So it is the regulations which obviously are housed within the Ministry of Transportation, which are basically hurting connectivity in South Africa. And we've never had a conversation about that. Yeah. We have protected the market share of SAA to the disadvantages of businesses and all South Africans, because prices are only cheap between Johannesburg, Cape Town and Durban. Outside of that tourism triangle, prices are extremely expensive. That is because we've not changed our aviation regulations. So the problem that SAA is facing, those are man-made problems, but they've had a disadvantage to the South African public because we pay high prices. So
from the sky to the sea, I want to talk about the coronavirus and its impact on cruise tourism. Recently, I just saw a report that there is about 61 cases of the coronavirus on a cruise ship that is docked in Japan. So that ship that's docked in Japan is another one in Hong Kong, reportedly under quarantine. The cruise ship tourism industry is a big one for South Africa, isn't it?
It is a big one. I mean, even smaller secondary towns like East London are starting now to attract cruise ships, and it's a major part of the blue economy, Operation Pakisa.
Yeah.
So we have also to ensure that we quarantine this, but the Ports Authority is already articulated a very, very clear position that if a ship is coming to South Africa, they have to meet certain criteria and articulate the past 10 destinations they've been to. So fortunately from their side, they've been very, very clear about their messaging, which is obviously we appreciate that.
When does South African cruise season start?
It's all over it's 12 months.
Oh, okay.
It's
all right.
12 months because it's coming from other destinations from all over the world, because passing through the Cape is obviously a prime destination and a bucket list.
Should travelers be concerned?
Travelers must continue applying the necessary precautions whenever they travel, because this disease is very contagious. But again, at the end of the day, it goes back, besides this being a contagious disease, it goes back to primary health care and hygiene. We have to ensure that we do apply those necessary precautions.
It's those basics, isn't it? I mean, I was listening to Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who was a CNN contributor, and he was saying, you see all these people using the masks, and he was just talking about how effective are these masks, because the viral particles can get through, the gaps. But what it does is it prevents you from touching a surface and, touching your mouth or touching your nose, which we do, all the time. We don't realize it. So those masks are important in that regard. So you saying in terms of traveling, just follow the basics in terms of hygiene.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk to us about the initial impact. No doubt it's going to be difficult in this short term. But from your experience, do these things just work itself out in terms of the tourism industry, and tourism bounces back? I mean, how quick can it bounce back?
It can take possibly between 3 to 6 months, depending on how big, the pandemic is. But one thing you must understand is that tourism consumption has become institutionalized. The habit of holidays is now part and parcel of people's lives. So people do want to travel as part of their lifestyle. So destinations must therefore have a coherent message And immediately when the crisis ends, they must just increase their communication to indicate that they are open for business. And the most important thing, because this was the Chinese Lunar Year, their Christmas, they are cash laden. So obviously, when this crisis is finished, they would have money to travel to other destinations. And I hope South Africa raises hands and indicates that it's open for business.
Yeah, definitely, because we need it, because tourism is no doubt a catalyst to kickstart a struggling economy. But thank you very much indeed for your perspective. Always appreciate your expertise. Unathi Sonwabile Henama, tourism lecturer at Tshwane University of Technology. Quick break, more news next. Thank you very much, sir.